Okay, so we're live now. I am counting down from 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Good afternoon or evening, everybody, wherever you are. I am Earl Holland here with another Sports Refuge Podcast live stream ahead of our MLB playoff preview that will drop on October 6th. That's the start of the MLB playoffs. But before that, we're trying to get all the teams narrowed down. And of course, one team that is surging in the American League East, and especially a 4-team race and now 3-team race right now as it comes to that wild card. The Toronto Blue Jays, up-and-comers, made the playoffs last year in the shortened season and are looking to do it again. And here with me to talk about the Blue Jays and their playoff chances in a very crowded field is longtime Blue Jays fan Phil Chinnery. Phil, I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How is everything?
Doing all right now that we caught a couple wins against Minnesota over the weekend, because that series started off a little troublesome. But, I mean, there's hardly anything better than playoff baseball, man. I'm super excited for this last week. Basically, our fate is in our own hands with 3 games against the Yankees, 3 against the Orioles. We're 1 game back of Boston, 2 games back of the Yankees. So there's definitely a chance for us to make it. And if we can take down a couple division rivals on the way to that playoff spot, I'm here for it. So I'm excited for a big week coming up. And other than that, outside baseball, everything's great.
Hey, that's the best thing to do, especially that's the best thing to hear about, especially on a Monday. One thing I wanted to ask you as we get into this introduction: how long have you been a fan of the Blue Jays? Where did it all start?
Sure. So I'm actually the youngest of 3 siblings. I've got an older brother who's about 5 years older than I am, and he was actually born just outside of Toronto. My older sister was born there as well. My mom and dad lived there for a good while. I was actually born in Detroit, but I still have a ton of family that lives in Toronto, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all that good stuff. So, growing up as a kid, I used to go there 2-3 times a year on different vacations. It's kind of just stuck with me. And then, of course, as I blossomed into a sports fan growing up, in the 90s, the Blue Jays were arguably in the first half of the 90s, probably the best team. You could argue the Braves, but of course they beat the Braves in 92 and beat the Phillies in 93. So I'm a 5-6-year-old kid just learning about sports. So, of course, I'm going to jump on A, my brother's favorite team, and B, a team that's winning a lot. So, I've been with them ever since. It's been some interesting times, to say the least, over the past, it's almost been about 30 years now. Back-to-back World Series was awesome. We had some other really good teams, good players, fun to watch, that sort of thing. So it's really nice to see them back in the fold again, trying to get after it and be a winning franchise once more.
And it's interesting. I always say that I've been following my teams for almost close to 30 years too, and it sort of makes you think, especially 30 years being that heavily invested in a team like that, and especially all the ups and downs. No team, no matter what sport, has been consistently successful over a 30-year span, because every team's bound to have their ups and downs. You can look at the Patriots, you can look at the Yankees, you can look at the Red Sox, the Dodgers, and all those things, and everybody has had their lean years. And I think being able to follow a team consecutively for 30 years, not taking any breaks, because many times as they make it easy enough to sort of like wash your hands and throw up and just say, I'll wait till next season. It really does take a lot of persistence, and it takes a lot of dedication to do that.
No, it certainly does. And like I said, I was born in Detroit, so my favorite NFL team is the Lions. So you can imagine how tough that's been for me. And then I'm a University of Michigan fan, and we haven't done anything there since 97. So, I follow a lot of losing teams, kind of a tough situation to be in, but honestly, man, I love it. Just sports, the way it brings everyone together. You can argue about it day and night, on a whole bunch of different subjects. And I love it, man. Ever since I'm a little kid, I was huge into baseball cards. I still am. I kind of do that as like a secondary side hustle sort of deal. That's what got my start into sports, was reading the backs of cards, learning stats, and, watching sports every morning before school and that sort of thing. So sports is life. I work in sports. I work in college athletics, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely great. I wanted to go into your most memorable moment as a Blue Jays fan. I know you said growing up in the early half of the 90s, you were about 5 or 6 years old when the World Series runs occurred. To you, what sticks out as a Blue Jays fan, your biggest memory as a Blue Jays fan?
Well, I think the biggest one in franchise history has to be the Joe walk-off Game 6 of the 93 World Series off Mitch Williams. That gave them their second title in 2 years. Just an absolutely awesome moment for Joe Carter and the country of Canada. Honestly, that's the other thing about Toronto is now that, obviously the Expos have been gone for 20 years. That's Canada's team. It's the only team in Major League Baseball that's not in America. So it's really cool to see the whole country get behind them when they're doing well. And for the most part, when they're doing not so well either. But I would say actually me personally, just because I was only 6 years old when Joe Carter hit that home run, I thought it was really cool, but I didn't quite grasp everything that was happening. So I'm going to actually go with 2015 ALDS, Jose Bautista, the walk-off, the bat flip. Just the coolest moment ever. He hit it. He knew it was a nuke. Looks over, tosses the bat. It's the coolest thing in the world. The whole stadium's going absolutely bonkers. So to me, personally, for something that I witnessed, that's by far the coolest moment as a Blue Jays fan. And I'm actually fortunate enough through my previous job, which was working in a college summer baseball league down here in Florida. I've actually met Jose Bautista a number of times. I've got autographs and pictures with him and stuff like that. So he's an awesome dude. Really glad he was able to have that moment for my favorite team. And that's something that I'll remember forever. I've got the autograph photo of him flipping the bat, signed by him, framed up over here. And it's just a really cool moment in team history. It's definitely my favorite as a Blue Jays fan. You're muted, I think. We're good now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Had a little bit of technical issues. But yeah, I was saying to be able to have not only a picture of that moment, but an autograph as well, that's got to be extremely huge and one of those things that, everybody puts up with pride with something like that. Going into the season, what did you have expectations for the Blue Jays? I know, especially last year's expanded playoff, 16 teams, Toronto getting in the playoffs, especially it was a tight race at the end as well. What were you expecting for the Blue Jays to do? And did you expect there were going to be some growing pains, especially for the young guys, especially coming off that season? Did you think, was it too much a little too soon? I know a lot of projections were thinking the Blue Jays were maybe a couple of years away from really becoming a competitive team.
Yeah, I'm in that camp for sure. I was not expecting a playoff push this soon in a standard playoff format of 5 teams. They're so young, right? I mean, Vlad Guerrero is 22. Bo, I think, is 23. It's just crazy to watch them be so effective on the diamond. I knew they were going to be fun and exciting to watch, but I also assumed there's going to be growing pains along the way. And we've seen that too. I mean, I think Bo Bichette might lead the league in errors or something like that. There have been some ups and downs. There have been games where the offense, which is so potent, it hasn't shown up at all. And so there have been ups and downs, but overall, the team has blown away my expectations. Biggest issue for me is the pitching, which has been not amazing. And injuries have kind of hurt the team as well. The whole George Springer missed a bunch of time. And then when he came back recently, up until the last 2 games of this Twins series, he was in a terrible slump. He was something like, I think it was 2 for 38 or something like that, batting leadoff. And, the whole team was kind of struggling for a while there. But expectation-wise, coming into the season, I was not expecting a playoff push at all. So this is an absolute treat. Even if we don't make it, it's definitely something they can hang their hat on and say, hey, we can go get them next year with another year of experience under our belt. I think they're in really good shape for the future.
Was there a point? Okay, the Blue Jays are making the playoffs, and I know that recent surge in the past few weeks definitely they were showing everybody in the American League East that, hey, this isn't just Tampa Bay, New York, and Boston. But to you, was there a particular moment that said, yep, these guys are going to the playoffs?
It's kind of a 2-part thing for me on this one. I'm really glad you sent me these questions ahead of time so I could do a little bit of research. But the 12-1 start to start the month of September was huge. That obviously catapulted them right into the thick of the race. Anytime you can win 12 out of 13 games, apparently the Blue Jays and the Cardinals are the only teams that can do that right now. But that was huge, obviously. And then the other thing is just the overall lineup. One thing I find very interesting is that 4 guys, Marcus Semien, Vlad Guerrero, Bo Bichette, and Teoscar Hernandez, are all on the brink of having 100 RBI seasons. So I said to myself, when's the last time one team had 4 100 RBI guys on one squad? It's happened one time in the history of the American League. It was the 1936 Yankees. They had 5 guys get 100 RBIs, which is insane. And then for the NL, there have been 8 teams that had 4 guys 100 RBIs, the last one being the 2003 Braves. So the fact that the Blue Jays are doing something that hasn't been done in 18 years and only one other time in the American League history, I think is pretty special. So just seeing those bats in action, obviously Vlad's having a ridiculous season. And if it wasn't for Ohtani being able to pitch pretty decently, I think he'd be a no-doubt MVP winner. Unfortunately, he's not going to take it this year. Ohtani's got that locked up for sure. But overall, just seeing them swing and then that September run is definitely what, put the positivity back in my mind that they had a shot to make the playoffs.
To you, was there a moment that personified, well, it doesn't look like this year's their year, that they gave it a nice run, that playoffs might not be in the picture?
Yeah, so actually it happened about 2 weeks before the beginning of September. There was a stretch from August 12th to August 22nd where in 10 days they played 9 games. They went 2-7 in those 9 games, which, it happens. You can't expect a team to win every single game. Here's the issue, though. The teams they lost to were the Angels, the Mariners twice, the Nationals twice, and the Detroit Tigers twice. Those 7 terrible losses. The Mariners are obviously in the playoff hunt right now, but the other 3, Angels, Nationals, and Tigers, they haven't sniffed playoff contention since probably late June, early July. And in the thick of things, in the thick of a playoff race, you're losing 7 games in 9 tries to some really bad teams. That was very disappointing to see and kind of put a shadow over, all the cool stuff that had happened up until then. But then obviously, like I said, they turned it around at the beginning of September. So we're back on the positivity train and hoping for the best here in the final week of the season.
That's one question I always like throw on sort of out of nowhere, but how important has Marcus Semien's addition been to the roster? I know everybody talked about Springer and his acquisition, but to you, has Marcus Semien been compared to, really in that lineup, but stabilize the infield? I know that he's a natural shortstop, and coming from Oakland, he was able to maybe use this as a one-year deal to parlay himself into your free agency games in this offseason. But to you, how big was Semien's acquisition?
Oh, he's without question the biggest acquisition. I know Springer the sexy deal because he signed the big long-term contract, hundreds of millions of dollars. Semien, I don't really understand why other teams weren't giving him a shot because he only signed the one-year deal with Toronto, and he's coming off of 2019 where he was 3rd in the MVP voting, right, out in Oakland. For whatever reason, people didn't want to give him a shot, but he's been absolutely massive for this lineup, batting in the 2-hole for most of the season. 43 home runs right now is tied for the most all-time ever by a second baseman in MLB history. So he's got 1 week to hit one more. He's also at 99 RBI, so he's 1 solo home run, and he hits that 100 RBI mark, plus the all-time record for a second baseman, which is pretty impressive stuff. He's obviously a leader out there. You can tell he kind of runs the infield, helps out Bo a lot, and the other young guys at first and third as well. So he's a natural leader, huge addition. He actually leads the team in WAR. If you're into that whole side of the game, he has better WAR than Vlad Jr. does, which is interesting because Vlad Jr. leads the league in multiple categories and is a potential Triple Crown winner. Probably not so much anymore, but he was for a while. But it's very interesting to me to see Marcus Semien is actually the most valuable player on this Blue Jays team if you go by WAR.
And now Charlie Montoyo being the manager, how has he been in this situation, a full-fledged season? I know last year there was the shortened season, the 60 games, but over the stretch of 150 some odd games, what is your evaluation of Charlie Montoyo?
He's not my favorite manager that we've ever had. I know one of my favorite things to do, just like any other depressed sports fan, is anytime you get a loss is go find the team Twitter page and just read the comments, right? Because you'll have everyone and their mom getting in there about what the team did wrong, what's not going well. And a really common thread this season is during the losses, a lot of people have been upset with Charlie for a lot of the choices he's made, or definitely the choices he's made where he either left a guy in too long, or maybe he should have pinch hit someone but didn't. The bullpen all season long has been pretty awful. I'd say that's the weakest point on this team is the bullpen. But, if you don't have the talent there, what can you actually do about it? It's not like he's just the one out there throwing the pitches. Other guys need to step up in a big way. And sometimes they haven't, sometimes they have. But overall, I think it's still a successful season. If he can make a run in the playoffs, I'll tip my cap to him for sure. I'm not sure he's the guy to lead this team for the near future. But he's done an okay job. I'll give him like a 6 out of 10, 6.5 out of 10.
I know I was reading somewhere everybody's saying the Blue Jays are winning in spite of Montoyo, so that's why I was curious about your thoughts on how good of a manager he was. I know that when it came up to some of the other when it came up to hiring a new manager, replacing John Gibbons, that was a something that was out there. Is like, who else could there be that could take that job?
Right. Yeah. And I know a lot of people have been pretty upset, like I said, every time we lose. But when we win, all the credit goes to the players. When we lose, it all goes to the manager, right? So that's not really a fair position to be in. Sometimes I feel bad for the guy, but then if he does do something stupid, then I don't feel as bad. So we'll see what happens.
I will say this with Toronto, it seems like there has been a lot of stability because really outside of Jim Fregosi and the Tim Johnson incident and I guess and John Farrell, it's basically been really two guys who managed the tenure twice, Cito and John Gibbons. So it feels like at least there's a bit consistency between those guys, unless any of those two are coming out of retirement again.
Yeah, I would take Cito Gaston back. He's an absolute legend, man. He's a god in Canada. He can't do anything wrong. So big fan of his for sure. But overall, it's been really cool that, we're not turning over managers every couple of years. You see a lot of teams run into that in all sports. That's really something that's hard to get behind where, guys usually need 3-4 years to set something up and get a team together that they like. But, so many front offices are only giving them 1 or 2 years in this day and age. They want instant results all the time. And I think that's a big issue in sports, especially at the college level. But, we won't get into that too much. But, bring back Cito. I'd be super happy. But for right now, let's just focus on this week, and we'll see what happens.
Going to the World Series prediction, who do you have coming out of the American League? Who do you have coming out of the National League? Who wins the World Series, and in how many games?
All right. So, obviously, I would love the Blue Jays to be that team. And I think they have the pieces to get it done, mainly because in a series, you can shorten your rotation out, right? So, Robbie Ray, AL Cy Young candidate, has been phenomenal, obviously. One of my favorite players, Alek Manoah, who's only in his second year out of he's a rookie this year, drafted 2 years ago out of West Virginia. He's been absolutely stunning coming up. I think he came up in June and has just been lights out for this team. He had a huge start over the weekend against Minnesota. He's done very well. Steven Matz, who came over from the Mets, he had a good season. So I think there's pitching there. And then obviously the offense is very strong if, maybe inconsistent. So I don't know if I'm ready to stamp that Toronto is World Series bound yet. So all that being said, just so I can get away from the norm here, pick for the AL, and this might surprise a couple people. I'm going to go with the Chicago White Sox. I actually really like that team. My preseason prediction way back in March was Chicago White Sox versus San Diego Padres. Obviously, the Padres did everything they could to take themselves out of the race, unfortunately. But the White Sox, I think, have a tremendous amount of talent on both sides of the ball. They're so young, but they're so, so good. And I love the moves that they've made, picking up Kimbrel to be your setup guy, leading to Liam Hendricks as your closer. When you have a bullpen like that in the playoffs, that is so important, man. And then Lance Lynn's been pitching absolutely lights out. Carlos Rodon had the no-hitter earlier in the season. And then that's not even top the offense yet, which just has so much pop, so much power. Luis Robert coming back. That kid is an absolute monster. He's a future MVP. You heard it here first. I guarantee Luis Robert wins an MVP before his career is all said and done. So that's AL. And now you can't go against the Dodgers. I just don't see how you can. The Giants have been an amazing feel-good story all season long. I'm just not sold, man. Like, they top to bottom, they don't have the talent that the Dodgers have. And they also haven't paid the money the Dodgers have, but it's part of the game. And Dodgers, they've been there. Obviously, they know what they need to do to win. It's going to be really hard to bet against that rotation that LA has. So give me the Dodgers out of the AL. And then just for fun, let's call it the White Sox, man. Let's give them the White Sox in 6 games as World Series champs.
One thing I forgot to mention, I wanted to ask you as well. If the Blue Jays make the playoffs, who do they match up the best with in the American League? Who do you feel like they can take out easily in the American League playoffs?
So I actually looked at all the potential playoff teams before this. We're right around 500 against every team. Tampa Bay, we're 8-11. Boston, we're 9-10. We have a record against the Yankees, 10-6. White Sox were 3-4. Houston were 2-4. So, it's not anything egregious against the other really good teams in the AL. Tampa Bay is actually pretty scary, but it's not because of their roster, right? Because every year they lose guys, they bring in new guys, and they are winning, and they just do it all the time. It's Devil Ray magic. I know the Cardinals have Devil magic. This is Devil Ray magic, and it is absolutely ridiculous. So I would definitely want to avoid them because they've got something on their side. They probably should have won it last year, and they pulled Snell in the 5th inning, which was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life. Can't believe that happened. So this could be the year for Tampa as well. But they are just in general pretty scary. Other than that, though, I'm not too worried about it. The Yankees with a heavy right-handed lineup could be a little scary, especially in like a wild card game where you only have one shot, because that means the Blue Jays are probably going to throw Robbie Ray, a lefty, and now they're facing Judge and Stanton and LeMahieu and Sanchez and all these right-handed power hitters who usually feast on left-handed pitching. So not a great matchup there. But overall, with the way that Ray has been pitching this season, I'd put this up against anybody and be fairly confident that we can take a game.
Mm-hmm. As we start to wrap things up, do you have any shout-outs that you want to give, anything you want to promote? And what are ways people can reach to you to talk Blue Jays baseball or anything else in general?
Yeah, sure, man. So you can find me on all social media channels at MellamоPhil, MellamоPhil, MellamоPhil. And then I actually do a college football podcast with a couple buddies called Shotgun Formation. We're actually going to be recording this week's episode in about 2 hours. So I'm doing a double podcast duty tonight. But Shotgun Formation is the college football podcast. We focus on the Big Ten. Me being a Michigan fan, my other buddies are Purdue and Indiana fans. So kind of a different perspective that you don't really see in the general media, 3 Big Ten teams. So it's a lot of fun. We enjoy it and would highly encourage everyone to tune in.
Definitely. Really appreciate it. Before we wrap this up, I want to say thank you to Phil Chinnery for being a part of this. And I definitely want to have you back on one time to have a full-fledged episode. I know just talking, talking before the pre-show, just getting all that done. It was interesting to hear experience, just even talking about Sports Jeopardy. And it's interesting how this whole feels like a lot of the stuff, the whole world is full of like connections to Sports Jeopardy. Just people I've interacted with, people I've met, and you never know who you're gonna run into, and just even the support system of fans out there who are watching and who are just there, who are auditioning. It's just crazy that it is it is a small community. Hopefully there's more how they have the main, the general trivia segment, the general trivia world where it's like a big small family. They need to do that more with sports trivia. There's got to be at least a lot more sports trivia-esque type of competitions out there for people.
Absolutely.
It's as Daryl Hammond would say, as Sean Connery, you're sitting on a gold mine, Trebek. You're sitting on a gold mine.
Absolutely, man. I'd love to see it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And for everybody who's been watching, stay tuned. I will have another interview in about a half hour or so where we'll be talking San Francisco Giants baseball for this podcast. And then following that, we'll talk with Megan Kim, who is a Tampa Bay Rays fan, and we'll talk about the Rays, who are the AL East Division champions. And I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and tuning in. Thank you guys again, Phil. I really appreciate it. We'll talk a little offline after this. And then for everybody who's watching, we'll see you in about 30 minutes or so.